The views and opinions expressed on all radio shows broadcast on Tom's Radio Toronto are entirely those of the hosts, guests, and callers who are entirely responsible for all show content and do not in any way reflect the opinions of Tom's Radio Toronto or its staff. These broadcasts are presented and made public as entertainment and general information only, in the hope that they will be entertaining and informative to listeners. They are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or mitigate in any way any disease or condition, or to promote any specific lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practice, nor is the information presented necessarily accurate or verifiable.
Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to Rainbow Connection. And Chris. Hello, Chris. How are you? Happy Sunday, everyone. So, yeah, we have special guests, right? Yeah. Okay, I will introduce one of the ladies, and you can introduce one of them. So let me start with the. I want to introduce Steph. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so let's start with Steph. I want to introduce our guest today. It's Steph Martin. Steph Martin is Secretary General of Migrante Canada. Steph, do you want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening. It's only 5. Okay. Well, yeah. And Chris, do you want to introduce Rosie here?
Okay, drum roll, drum roll.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Rosie Lucente. She's a community worker serving migrants herself, and she's a chairperson of Anak Bayan Toronto.
Yes. And
Hello. Good evening.
do you want to say something?
Hi, Rosie.
Yeah.
It's great to be
Welcome
here.
back, Rosie. So Rosie actually has been here before. So this is her second time.
Second time.
Yeah. So let's start. So since Rosie's been here before, so Rosie, how was your experience when you were here? The first time.
I was put on the spot, but I
You
think
were?
I managed to answer the questions.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, well, there's no right or wrong answer, so
True.
all good,
Yeah.
all good information, and always thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and also, well, today it's Steph's first time here in Tom's Radio Rainbow Connection.
Welcome,
Steph,
Steph. Welcome.
yeah,
Happy to be here.
yeah. So today, Chris, we'll tackle about LGBT rights in the Philippines and even here in Toronto. So let's start with Steph. Steph, you were like the first activist for LGBT in the Philippines, right?
No, not the first.
That's the first.
But my work did start activism for LGBT rights because when I came out, I was seeking for community, and I got involved in projects in university involving the LGBTQ movement here in Canada. So it was research and history. And then eventually I got into UFT's, University of Toronto's archiving program, where we look at the preservation of the stories of people. And then from there, I also got a job at the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives here in Toronto, but it's now called the Archives with a Q for queer. So I was very, very deep into that work. And from there, I was only seeing breadcrumbs of LGBT Filipinos. So I was really searching for Filipino community, and especially for the Filipino LGBT community. And then from there, I was looking for other people, because all this time I thought I was the only, the concept of being Filipino and LGBT did not seem connected to me. So I thought those two identities were separate, that I can't be a Filipino lesbian, a gay Filipino person. I thought that was impossible because of the conditioning in society and even the notions in the Philippines, where it's very conservative. But it's funny now that I look back at my history, because I've always been queer back home. I went to an all-girls school back home.
Oh, yeah.
And that was so normal.
Catholic
school.
Yeah,
Catholic school.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was so normal.
So where did you go? What school did you go to?
I went to Holy
Saint
Spirit
Mary.
School,
My guess is Saint Mary.
Or St. Joseph, Chris, right?
but they were nearby.
My guess talaga.
Yeah.
Yeah, so even from a young age, I already had experiences. It was normalized to me, and coming to Canada, where it's different. The Western culture sees LGBTQ communities and issues different. And so from that journey and knowing my history and accepting that is always part of me, I met other Filipino LGBT people, also youth, and we were really struggling with identifying with and even reconciling with what it means to be a Filipino LGBT here in Canada, here in Toronto, because context also different from other cities, because some are more conservative, like in Alberta, some are more progressive, like here in Toronto. So I did find a group of friends. They're called Makulay at Iba Pa. Shout out.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Hi, yeah.
And that
Yeah.
that
Hi to
translates
everyone.
to
Yeah.
and that translates to colorful and many more, because we understand that it's not just us being LGBT. We also have other aspects within our identity, like the Filipino identity, that's important to us. So at iba pa, di ba?
Yeah.
So from there, I also was seeking the political aspect, because I could not think beyond just my identity. And that's how I became more politicized with Anak Bayan Toronto at first. And now that I'm in Migrante Canada, I see the issues with migrant workers and immigrants here, and how being LGBT is an added layer of discrimination, and how it's a different context for them, especially for undocumented people, because these issues are not easy to talk about, and there's this extra level of fear.
Very true. Yeah.
So that is my journey.
So,
of being an
while
activist.
yeah, so like you said in the beginning, right? You were struggling to find like a community, right? Did you find a group of like LGBT group?
Yeah, with Makulay at Iba Pa, we had social events where we were really looking for people and providing that safe space for Filipino LGBT people to finally see, because they were also seeing that we have not found each other. We thought that we're
okay.
always alone, and maybe that's also different with the ages, because
Right.
we're in our 20s, and I know people in their older ages, there's been established communities before. So, iba rin. Yeah, it's
yeah.
also different with the
Yeah.
ages.
Chris, do you have a follow-up question with Steph?
Ako nabasa ko kasi sa bio niya, she's one of the first generation queer Filipino community organizer. What does it mean? Kasi ako rin medyo na ano, kaya can you elaborate on that? Why
First
you're the first,
generation.
considered the first generation? Yeah.
So that's just the term used when you come to Canada, first generation. So it doesn't mean that you're the first generation community activist.
So that's what I thought.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
like because you're young,
So,
you know what I mean.
Talking
You're
about,
in your
yeah, yun
20s.
na nga. Talking about your generation, so ano bang generation nyo? Generation Z versus millennials, ano ba to?
I think I'd be considered a millennial.
Millennials.
Kasi
okay.
90s,
So,
early 90s.
early
Yeah,
90s.
she came here, Chris, when she was only 13 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, she came here when she was young. Yeah, even
About
younger
the
than
same
us.
age.
Yeah, when she
So
came. Yeah.
si Rosie naman, she's so siya naman ang Gen Z.
No, Secretary General of Anak Bayan. Sorry,
Hindi yung
Chairperson. Yeah, Anak Bayan.
oh.
Yeah.
Hindi kasi considered din ba siyang millennial si
Gen
Not
Z.
anymore.
Gen Z na.
Gen Z.
Yeah.
So ayan, binigyan kita sir ng millennials versus Gen Z. Tingnan natin. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Anong masasabi mo sa Gen Z, Rosie? And what about Steph? Anong meron sa millennials?
Well, okay, maybe I'll speak first.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Rosie.
I notice well, lots of older people will criticize, of course, the younger generation, saying things like we're always on our phones. Usually we're always on our phones, and we're materialistic and things like that. But actually, I see a surge in young people, especially Gen Z, those who are in their teens, early 20s, who increasingly care about social justice, especially since 2020, when so many things happen around the world. For one, COVID-19 exposed, so many inequities, because we see here in Toronto, we see that migrant Filipinos and working class Filipinos are those who are hit the hardest by the pandemic. So that's one thing that made youth realize, oh hey, I should do something about inequality. And then another thing in 2020 was the Black Lives Matter movement, which made lots of youth feel this kind of fire inside them that I have to do something. I have to speak up and fight for equality, fight for social justice. So I see among my generation such a passion to fight for social justice. And it's not that we're separated from other generations, because I myself am inspired by those who came before me. I have titos and titas who have been activists for decades in the Philippines ever since, right? They're also progressive elders, diba? So
So you grew up actually seeing this, right? So that's how you get that fire in you.
I would say I was inspired by my dad to care about equality. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, do you think you can speak louder, or maybe you can put the volume a little bit louder
Yeah.
on your end? Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Any
Yes.
better? Any better?
A little bit better, I guess. Yeah, than before. Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, so we just had the That was your
Just
question,
heard
right?
from Rosie.
Yeah.
Yun nga, between millennials and Gen Z, I just want to know kung ano yung positive sa kanilang generation. Eto na ako sa millennials. I'm actually with Steph too, so go for it, Steph.
I mean, with millennials, I think it's still such a wide range because it goes, ano ba,
Right.
40 to 20s pa rin. And for me, I'm in that other end of the spectrum where I'm in my late 20s and I work a lot with, I have friends who are Gen Zs and I do learn from them a lot, especially with the use of social media, with the new languages evolving. And I also still learn from my elders, and I do challenge both sides because I feel like I'm in this middle of millennials are always being bashed, and and they say all these things, but you are also open to challenging them, and you criticize them, but also work with them to work together because, like Rosie said, these generations aren't separate anyway, and we do learn. It's just a generation. Sometimes it's just age, and that
Age is
shouldn't.
just a number.
Yeah,
ganon.
yeah, but that shouldn't
Yeah.
be you shouldn't put that as a barrier to connecting with other people, especially when you care about issues like ageless.
Yeah, ageless. Tama
Yeah,
yan.
you're right. Yeah.
And we meet halfway too, so yun na yun. Pero of course, not to brag, we are older, so we are smarter.
Yes.
Nagulan na.
Comes
Now
with
we're talking. Yeah.
experience, diba? No, that comes with experience.
Yeah.
Of course.
The older you are, the more experience.
But I also think that it's also valuable to listen to the younger people's experiences because they are different, but that doesn't mean that they're not, just because they're younger doesn't mean
They don't know anything.
they don't know anything. They do know a lot of things, and we learn from them and we learn from each other. So that's my take on millennials.
Progressive
Yeah.
nila. About
Yeah.
this, almost
Makulay,
same way.
actually, most of the members are young, right?
I used to be part of Makulay.
Yeah, I know.
we're
Not anymore?
Not anymore, but they are still my very good friends.
Oh, yeah, because I saw them when you were here, right?
Yeah.
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 Downstairs, yeah. We saw them. They were young. Yeah. Most of them are young.
Yeah.
Like Rosie.
They're
is
older
not
than
anyway.
me.
Oh, you
It's
really?
mixed.
It's a mix. So they're
Yeah.
mostly
Yeah.
old-
Ageless.
Yeah,
Oh,
ageless.
okay.
But they're
Let's just
mostly
put it that way.
late 20s.
Yeah.
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 Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, your mic
So,
actually is much better. It's a lot
Sino
louder.
namang pick natin yan? Is it Rose or Step pa rin? I think let's put the spot on Rosie this time. So Rosie, you mentioned your involvement with LGBTQIA plus communities. Tell us more about that. Tsaka pakiano lang din yung LGBTQIA. Can you reiterate ano ba yung meaning ng LGBTQIA?
Okay,
Please.
sure. LGBTQIA is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, Q for queer, and I for intersex, and A for asexual. Tapos may plus din because there's so many things in the spectrum of the LGBTQ community. As for
Like you evolve, right? It's
Yeah.
evolving.
yeah, there's so many identities, so that's why there's also a plus at the end there. And as for how I got involved, it's kind of the opposite of Steph, because Steph was saying she first got involved first through the intersection of Filipino and queer. For Steph, the first one was being queer, and then Filipino came after. For me, it was Filipino first, and then being LGBT. That's how I started to kind of explore that as well. So I joined Anak Bayan, which is a Filipino youth organization with about 50 members here in Toronto. I joined Anak Bayan in 2019, and that's when I started to learn about a lot about our Filipino community and how rampant inequality is. And the fundamental question is, if the Philippines is so rich in natural resources, right? Then why are the people still poor, and why are so many of us pushed to come abroad just for a better life, just for a better opportunity, for greener pastures? Why can't we have that back home? So I started to learn about inequality in our community and the roots of Filipino migration. And that's where I also learned about the Filipino LGBTQ community. Especially the first thing I learned about in Anak Bayan was the case of Jennifer Laude. Are you familiar with that name, Jennifer
Never
Laude?
heard. Have you heard of that name, Chris?
Nope. Can you tell us
Yeah,
more
can you tell
about
us
that case?
about her?
Sure.
Yeah.
Jennifer Laude was a transgender woman who was actually murdered by an American soldier in the Philippines.
Oh, okay.
Okay, back in 2014, she was murdered. And this soldier, his name is Pemberton. He was actually released from prison early, after serving like less than 6 years. He was released from prison early.
What was his sentence? How many years was his sentence?
I'm not
years.
sure what his
After 6 years.
it was a very minor sentence for
Oh, really?
what he did, because
Because he's an American soldier.
because he's an American soldier.
Yeah.
He had clearly murdered Jennifer Laude and violently murdered her. And then he was released scot-free by the Philippine government on good behavior. And this is, of course, because of the relationship between the U.S. and the Philippines.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
So were they in their relationship or?
They were not in a relationship. So Jennifer Laude was a sex worker.
Oh, okay.
And
Gotcha.
they had been having relations, and he reportedly said that when he discovered that Jennifer was transgender, it angered him and it pushed him to the point of murder. And this was actually used as a defense in his case, that the fact that Jennifer had concealed her gender identity legitimized his violence and killing of her. Right?
Oh.
And they use this in his defense. So that's clear transphobia, right? In the courts, in our Philippine courts. So there's so many things intersecting here. One is the transphobia, and two is the international relations between the US and the Philippines, where basically American soldiers can come to the Philippines, they can, rape our women and kill our women and still get away with it. Right? And those are remnants of being a U.S. colony ever since, the turn of the century, ever since the 1900s. Up to now, the U.S. still has
Control.
this control over our country. So that's how I first kind of learned that the struggle of the LGBT community and the struggle of the Philippines to be truly independent and democratic, both of those struggles are linked. Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, he was released early, but was he released from? Wait, was he suspended as a U.S. military?
Good
or-
behavior. Good behavior.
He was
daw.
he was released
Kaya
early, but
na-release.
other than that, was he also suspended?
I know that he returned to his hometown. He was able to return to his family, to his hometown in the U.S. I don't believe he serves anymore in the U.S.
Oh,
military.
But he's walking free.
He's walking
Yeah.
free, living his best life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also-
After murdering someone really bad. Yeah.
I also want to add that this is not the first case of
Yeah.
a U.S. soldier murdering a transgender woman in the Philippines, because this is not a one-time incident. It's very systematic, and there have been other women, transgender women, who have been in this situation before, and the fact that those cases were not solved before, and even Jennifer's case, as Rosie have said, was not solved. He was set free. It's because of these continuing relations agreements with the U.S. As a
And-
country
and,
in the
Philippines.
Philippines. Yeah.
It's actually written in our law in something called the Visiting Forces Agreement between the U.S. and the Philippines. It basically says that when American soldiers come on Philippine soil, they're still under U.S. law. So they still have the protections of U.S. law. They still have the protections being a U.S. citizen. Basically, they're not treated as Filipinos would be treated if a Filipino committed that crime. If a U.S. soldier commits that crime, because under the Visiting Forces Agreement, then the sentence is much lower than, the repercussions are much less, if any at all, right? Yeah.
I never even heard about that. So that's Chris, you haven't even heard about that. No, I'm talking about the murder. Yeah. That was 2014. So you were still in the Philippines when that happened, right?
I was still in the Philippines. I
Yeah.
had heard about it in the news, but I was 14 years old, so I couldn't really process it or think about it in this way. Yeah.
And this was happen. When did this happen? Like where did it happen?
Tarlac.
Olongapo.
Olongapo. Yes, because there's a
Right. That's the base.
there's a base
That's where
there.
the base was. Yeah.
The
Not
base,
anymore,
yeah.
right? They don't have the
Air
base
base
there
there.
anymore. It's still there.
Still
Yeah.
there.
I see.
Yeah.
I think andun pa.
Oh yeah.
Thanks
Yeah, so,
for sharing, Rosie. Kita mo nga, hindi namin
I
alam.
know. I never
Thanks
heard
for
about
sharing.
that. Yeah. So yeah. Well, that was 2014, right?
That's
Yeah,
one
15,
of
yeah.
the yung mga cases na meron. But I'm sure you guys have a list, right?
Mm.
And he was only released last year.
Is there anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, last year. Just last year.
Only. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Just
because it was
last year.
6 years, right? Yeah.
He was actually pardoned by
Pardoned by the
President Duterte.
You're kidding me, really?
Yeah.
So he's clean.
He's
Okay.
He's
walking
clean. He's just
free.
walking free.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened.
No.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that's how even
And that's sad.
the
Yeah.
justice system is unfair and
Yeah.
really not for the people.
Wow. Yeah. So anything like based on your experience, guys, like in the Philippines, especially Rosie,
How
because
is-
you're
yeah.
new, right? Yeah. And
Experience nila, tsaka how is their ano yung ginagawa ng organization nyo with this type of yung mga scenario? Merong investigation na nangyari? Can you guys escalate anything?
Right. In
May
terms
mga representative ba kayo
Right.
na
Right. That's a good question. In the case of Jennifer Laude, for example, one of the biggest things that we do is raising awareness about it, because many people haven't heard about this case and that her family still hasn't had justice. So that's the biggest thing, especially abroad, when many Filipinos are not aware of what's going on back home, and that we're actually still connected to what's going on back home. The U.S. is just our neighbor down south. So there's a lot that we can do to make calls, for example, towards the Canadian government, to also pay attention to these abuses. And we also had a campaign last year advocating for a transgender migrant worker who was undocumented and then put in immigrant detention in Japan.
Okay.
She's also Filipina. So we had a campaign to raise awareness about her issue, raise funds for her living expenses, and we also had lobbying efforts and gathering signatures and letters to demand her to be released. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, but we'll take a few minutes break, Owen,
Sure.
DJ Owen, and we'll be right back. And
Water break.
yeah.
Thank you.
Our company is committed to providing truthful, honest, competent, and result-oriented service through advising and representing our clients in Canada and overseas in a wide range of immigration matters. We focus on providing support, building dependable relationships, and promoting success. We are dedicated to understanding what results you want and to helping you understand what actions we can take on your behalf.
And we're back. Hi, Chris. Yeah, we have a
Hello,
question
hello.
here. Yeah, we have a question here from Tita Cecil. Hi, Steph. How many migrante members now here in Canada? And also, Rosie, how many Anak Bayan members we have here in Canada?
Okay, I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
So, Migrante Canada is actually an alliance of Filipino migrant and immigrant organizations. We have so far 13 member organizations with chapters across Canada. So there's one in Vancouver, Alberta, Ontario. We also have a member organization in Barrie, and we have some in Quebec, Montreal.
Oh, it's all over the
And
place.
each member, each organization, I think overall there's 100 plus across Canada, Migrante members.
I see. What about your Rosie? Do you want to answer the question?
So Anak Bayan Canada also has multiple chapters across Canada. But besides that, we're international as well. So around the world, we have about 20,000 members. And then in Canada, it's about 200. So we have chapters in British Columbia, Ottawa, Montreal, and here in Toronto, as well as one in Alberta.
Oh,
And
I see.
we're trying to start up chapters elsewhere across Canada. So locally, we have about 50 members.
We have also viewers here. Connor Harlan also. There is a great documentary about Call Her Ganda.
Yes, call her
Do you know? Do you know her? Do you know him? I mean, Connor. Any of
Yes.
you? Oh, okay, okay.
Yes, I know
okay.
Connor.
Yeah, and also Connor Harlan said he was discharged.
Yeah.
Also,
yeah,
you're probably
Pemberton.
talking about
Pemberton was
Pemberton. Yeah,
discharged.
and of course, Anami Robles is watching. Thanks for watching. And Chris, we're back to you.
Yeah. So I know. Thank you, ladies, for all the valuable information that you're sharing with us and our viewers. Now let's focus on the individual ladies, sir. Sa kanilang mga accomplishment Rosie, what are you currently doing right now other than being the chairperson of Anakbayan Toronto?
Yeah, we can't let them go without asking that, right? That's
Of
the
course,
important,
yeah, no.
part of the show. Yeah. So who wants to start? It doesn't matter. You can start, Rosie.
I can go ahead.
Yeah.
So as a chairperson of Anakbayan, I'll talk about that first. What I do is kind of oversee the organization, convene our general meetings, and I'm also the spokesperson of the organization. And the reason that I'm involved in this movement, again, is because even though I'm here abroad, I still want the Philippines to improve. I want the roots of migration to be addressed, because I meet so many Filipinos every day through my work, which I'll also talk about that, through my job. And a common thread that I hear when they're talking to me is, I miss the Philippines. If I could choose to live anywhere, I would go back to the Philippines. Ang sarap-sarap ng buhay doon. Life is so sarap.
Good.
Life is so
Good
good
in the
there,
Philippines, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
my life in the Philippines, but I had to come here to provide for my children. And so that's something that I want to address, and that's I address that through being an Anakbayan, through being part of this bigger movement. And as well, I'm also a community worker at C Center.
Oh, so this is what you do.
This is
Are
my
you still
job,
at
yeah.
school, or you're working full time?
I'm working, almost full-time working. I graduated high school in 2019. I have not yet pursued post-secondary. Maybe eventually.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, currently I'm working almost full-time at C Center, which is a social service agency serving Vietnamese, Chinese, and Filipino communities. Wanting usually helping newcomers, new immigrants settle and adjust to life in Canada, right? So things that I do at my work is, of course, I meet lots of Filipinos. I have workshops, especially for youth, to adjust to life here.
The newcomers, yeah.
Newcomers, yeah.
Yeah.
So what about you, Steph?
So I am the Secretary General of Migrante Canada, and that entails overseeing the member organizations and really learning about each province's issues when it comes to Filipino migrants. Some of our campaigns include regularization of work, and right now a hot issue that we're trying to campaign for is the overseas absentee voting.
Oh, yeah.
Because like Rosie said,
We're gonna need that soon, right?
yeah. Like
Right.
Rosie said, we are not. I got involved in this. Actually, I was a former vice chairperson in Anakbayan Toronto.
Yeah, we
I
have
see.
used.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
And I now moved sectors, and with the work there, syempre, it's still continuing, but now in a different sector. So really learning about the issues of migrant workers, especially undocumented. And since some laws are specific to the province, it's really learning about the migration pathways, how people apply for permanent residence, and the issues with that. So, and I also attend meetings and contribute to the conversations globally. So there's also Migrante International. So I have been to meetings where we talk about the national budget in the Philippines for 2022. And I've heard from Migrante chapters in Japan, in Cyprus, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, and in the US. And
I
how even though we are across the world, separately, we have our own issues. There are still those similar issues that are rooted in the Philippine government and the system there.
So are you a full-time student, or you're full-time? You work full-time now?
I graduated in 2019 with my master's in archiving from University of Toronto, and I'm involved in some projects. Right now, we do have a project in collaboration with organization like Anakbayan Toronto, actually documenting and showing the Filipino activism in Toronto and the history of that. So,
Oh, I see.
so from the martial law era to there was a case in Scarborough where Jeffrey Riodica was shot by the police, and through
Yeah,
the current
yeah.
Oh yeah,
I
that
think
was
I
just,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was just this year, right?
That was in
2004.
No, not this
2004.
year.
Oh, no, not
Yeah.
that's a different one.
Yeah.
That I'm talking about. Yeah.
So that project just outlines the efforts here that we have in Toronto, the activism here in Toronto, and rooting it in the Philippines, and the campaigns that we've done throughout. So involved in some of those projects.
right.
Yeah.
Do you have a follow-up question with Steph, Chris?
Ako, no, not really question, but I just want to tell these ladies I'm really impressed by what you guys are doing for napakabata nila, and
I
they're
know.
spending their time doing this socio-civic work. Like, not everybody at their age is aware of what's happening in the Philippines, and nandito sila, they're trying to fight for their rights.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that Anak Bayan and Migrante are just part of a bigger movement. So we're member organizations of Bayan. It's on my t-shirt. Bayan.
Oh yeah.
Or
Bayan Canada.
in
Yeah.
Tagalog, it's Bagong Alyansang Makabayan. So New Patriotic Alliance in English. So this is the alliance of hundreds of progressive Filipino organizations across the world. And we are really rooted in the people and the power of everyday people to enact social change. So we're not affiliated with any political parties, any, politicians, and that's not what our work is. We don't campaign, or we don't campaign to run for office and things like that. We're really grassroots organizations of everyday people, workers, students, youth, who are fighting for our rights and fighting for the Philippines.
So you're familiar of what's going on in the Philippines when it comes to LGBTQIA, right? 'Cause, yeah. So do you want to share anything about that? Do you want to elaborate on that? On what's going on?
Yeah, I'll start and then Steph can
Yeah,
continue.
because Steph also can.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Philippines, in terms of policy and legal protections for the LGBTQ community, there are none.
I know. That's what I heard. Yeah.
So right
Like-
now, yeah,
No rights whatsoever, right? I mean,
no protections, no protections for the LGBT community. Like in here in Canada, for example, there's anti-discrimination laws, and of course, same-sex marriage is legalized. In the Philippines,
I think it will never happen in the Philippines.
we have to keep on fighting for
Yeah.
it, but in the Philippines, we know there's still many conservative values, and same-sex marriage is illegal, and there are no kind of laws protecting the LGBT community. But currently, there's a policy that's being proposed. It's been proposed already for years, and it's keeps on getting delayed, but it's called the SOGI bill. SOGI stands for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, and Expression, SOGI. And the SOGI bill clarifies, first of all, it gives information on what is all of those things: sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it also,
I think may na-interview na ako na member ng SOGI.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Previous radio, yeah.
right.
Oh, from Queer Talks, right?
From
Yeah.
Queer Talks, yeah. May nakausap na kami na president.
Yeah, like
ng
I
si
said
Jen.
before, Chris was with Queer Talks.
Yes.
Back then, yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah. Inelaborate niya nagbigay siya ng more information about transgender in the Philippines,
Right.
kung yung mga treatment na nakukuha
Right,
nila,
right.
yung mga ganun.
Yes.
Right.
So, you're next.
And you can continue.
Steph, yeah, you can continue. Once you
Steph.
started. Yeah, Steph.
Yeah, with the SOGI Equality Bill, they've been proposing it since 2000.
And it's activist, it's community organizations that are really pushing for SOGI, right? Like I said, everyday people who are pushing for this. Yeah.
yeah.
And so when did they started this? Like
2000.
2000, and until now we're like, oh my god.
Yeah, it
that's-
keeps getting pushed because of the resistance of the government.
As if it's
against it.
not,
government.
it's not gonna, it's not gonna happen. So, but there's also like you said earlier, right? I mean, there's no same-sex marriage in the Philippines, and I know there's like ceremony here and there, but it's not like
It's not recognized
It's not
by the
recognized, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not really legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for
So-
me,
yes, go ahead.
how I got super what do you call that, aware of what's happening in the Philippines is from an organization called Bahaghari. Bahaghari stands for or translates to rainbow in Tagalog, and they were actually
Yes.
formed because of the case of Jennifer Laude. They were formed because of that. And they
I see.
advocate for the rights and welfare and issues of LGBT Filipinos. And they're just one of the many LGBT organizations in the Philippines, because there are also others like Lakapati Laguna in southern Tagalog. And yeah, there are many organizations. And from there, I learned about what they advocate for and the issues, such as even in the schools, they still discriminate with how students express themselves.
Right.
Short hair,
The way they dress
the
up.
boys,
Yes.
Male and
painting
female
nails,
uniforms.
the
Yeah.
uniforms. So in those aspects, but also the human rights violations against queer LGBT activists. Last June 2020, there was this case called Pride 20, where 20 activists and allies from different organizations were violently arrested for protesting for their rights.
It was a Pride March.
Oh, it was a Pride
It
March.
was a
yeah.
peaceful Pride
Pride
March,
March.
and
Yeah.
they did not violate any laws, but they were grabbed and not given their rights. They were not told their rights and the reasons for why they were being arrested, and they were detained for 5 days, where they experienced
Psychological abuse.
Psychological
Really?
abuse. They had a transgender woman member who they harassed and binastos sila, and they
Yeah.
refused to give the food that the community organizations were giving to them.
Oh,
They
really?
slept on the floor, and there were cases where the policemen were threatening their lives and really saying that being discriminated against, just not just by being LGBT, but also just by being human like people. So that's where as a queer Filipino, I was so enraged, and
Yeah.
there's this image in my head where I was like, that's it. A Filipino policeman in what do you call it? Their uniform, holding the rainbow flag in his hand. And
Oh, yes,
that
there's a photo.
that I can share that photo after, but that was really enraging. And for us here in Canada, how do we amplify these issues? Rosie already mentioned how people don't even know what's happening in the Philippines. So our job as these organizations is to amplify those. And me and some members stayed up writing a statement just to amplify this. And we also amplified the call for donations internationally, because legal fees there are it's not a joke.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they were already illegally arrested.
20 of them.
20 of them. So
And no one helped them? Like, their family never even get them a lawyer or
of
something
course,
like that?
so this is a community effort to help
yeah?
them. There was
Help them.
big they were helped naman financially, emotionally. They had lawyers.
But we know even the police don't follow the law in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah, well, we know that, right? I know
And
that already, yeah.
and that happened because of the anti-terror law that was proposed early in June, and it was a bill, and then it became a law in July.
Oh.
So that is just one of the many highlights of human rights violations that's happening in the Philippines right now. And we heard cases of what do you call that, quarantine violators, when they learned that they're lesbian or gay. There is a case in Maguindanao where they told the lesbian people who they arrested for violating the quarantine to shave their heads.
Ooh.
Wow.
Wow.
There are cases of transgender women who have been found dead and being discriminated against, being brutally murdered. There are also red tagging and human rights violations against queer activists, where the state surveils them, accuses them of being communists, and eventually they get targeted. An example of this is a LGBT human rights advocate named Ryan Hubila. Yeah, and he was recently killed just last year for fighting for the rights and welfare of Filipino LGBT activists. So these are
So
not just because of their identity it's because they are fighting for the rights and welfare of the Filipino people and for what is right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you are really updated. So you have connections with the LGBTQIA in the Philippines,
Yes.
and you too.
Yes,
So
we
you-
work with Bahaghari, which is the organization based in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. So, that's why you're updated when it comes to this, right? Because you're here.
There's also Baghari in Toronto, right? Meron din sila Melania, like are they still active members?
Oh, I actually know Melania and the Babay. They're called the Babay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
No, they're sorry. But, marami kasing mga groups, like I years ago I'm in the event with them, so
Wow.
marami namang mga events. Baka na malaman na nila yung age ko.
Now I know. But yeah, Babaylan, I was friends with them before I actually joined these organizations, and we did some social events as well. But when it comes to really what's happening in the Philippines, we didn't talk that much about that, but they do support the work that we do. There was a spoken word performance event last year where
Yeah.
they actually amplified the issue that Rosie mentioning about the transgender women in Japan. So they also amplified that issue through art.
Yeah. They participate in the film fest too. They create their own movies, right?
Yeah,
Mga life stories ng queers and lesbians, yeah.
So, Rosie, I'm sure you are happy that you are here now, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to be
Oh,
here.
No, I'm talking about here in Toronto. Yeah, not just here in our Tom's
okay,
Radio,
I
right? Yeah. I guess, yeah, because like we just discussed earlier, right? I mean, being gay in the Philippines is tough, you know? I mean, you start with your family, and then, of course, when they eventually accept you, and then there goes the community and the people around you, right? Like, so anything from you, Chris?
Napaka-passionate
Yeah, because-
itong dalawa na to for
I
everything
know,
that they
because,
do. And,
even-
and for all the listeners and viewers, really, we want to help them amplify all these issues that they're mentioning right now. Anybody who's listening, if whatever we can do to help them, to support them with their
Yeah.
fight.
Because they're only under 20s, you know? Yeah, they're
Yeah,
young,
they
you know?
could be doing
Like,
something else, right?
Age doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You know, that's what Chris was saying earlier, that she's impressed
I know.
that because you're young
very
and you're very
impressed, yeah.
passionate, and
It's
you can see the
totoo.
fire, like
Yeah.
what you're really doing, what you're fighting for, and you know
It's
what
a
you're
huge responsibility to take in for this through.
yeah.
But we don't take it on alone,
Yeah.
right? That's why we are part of organizations, and we're part of the bigger national democratic movement. So it's not just us as individuals leading it.
We are a collective, and to even know that international,
Yeah.
we are an overseas chapter.
Ah,
It
okay.
just gives you a bigger perspective of how we continue the fight
Oh,
from the
okay.
Philippines.
Okay. We'll just take another few minutes break, and we'll be right back.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our company is committed to providing truthful, honest, competent, and result-oriented service through advising and representing our clients in Canada and overseas in a wide range of immigration matters. We focus on providing support, building dependable relationships, and promoting success. We are dedicated to understanding what results you want and to helping you understand what actions we can take on your behalf.
Yeah, and we're back.
You're
Yeah,
back.
yeah, and actually, I want to say a shout out to Rodalyn Peralta. Hi, thanks for watching.
Hi,
So,
Rhoda.
yeah, and Connor, hard.
Hi, Connor.
This is Connor.
Hi,
Yeah, and Connor also is like, it's a normal discharge, not dishonorable discharge. I think he's talking about the
Pemberton.
yeah,
Joseph
Pemberton. Yeah. And thanks for watching, Connor. Yeah, and yeah. Chris, anything?
Ladies, you
Yeah.
are both doing so much for our Filipinos fellowship. How do you look after yourself? Any other hobbies or interests?
I love to bike, actually.
Oh yeah, you were riding your bike when we first met, right? Weren't you?
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
rode my bike here. I also biked here today.
Oh.
I really enjoy cycling.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that keeps me going.
Like, kaya pala napaka-fit mo.
I know, right? Yeah. And what about you?
Like this.
Any?
What about you, Steph?
Yeah, Steph.
Hobbies? I need to find a hobby.
Oh.
But I do like to write. And how do I take care of myself? I'm very grateful that we practice collective, having a collective, being in a collective. So, syempre, me and Rosie
Yeah.
are really close. Our kasamas, our comrades, we really take care of each other. And yeah, kapag may problema, if there are any problems, I have a collective to go to, and they have a collective to go to me too.
Yeah,
Also,
because this is too much, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for you
Yeah.
guys to take on this, you know, all these issues. I don't know how you guys sleep at night, right? Because what do we do, right?
so you guys are like BFF?
Oo, syempre naman.
Oh,
Of course.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, but like Steph is saying, our organizations like in Anak Bayan, for example, as well as doing the everyday work of, writing statements, doing interviews, leading campaigns, doing outreach, an important component of our work is just building what we call collective life, because, this work is actually, it takes a lot of energy, and it really takes a huge will to continue
Yeah.
to do it every day. But we also build collective life, meaning we spend time together. We really get to know each other. It's not the same as a workplace, where you see your coworker and you maybe have lunch together, but at the end of the day you're just coworkers.
Right. Yeah.
In our movement, we're not just coworkers, we're kasamas, or we're comrades in this fight.
And a lot of our work is really building relationships with
Yeah.
the everyday people, with each other, because we know that these problems, these issues are not towards individuals. It's really a systematic
Systemic.
problem. So we only have each other, so we are stronger if we're together.
Together.
We are stronger together.
Yeah, together. Yeah.
Ano? Laban na.
Yeah. Laban lang, di ba?
Yeah, laban.
Sulong.
So yun lang ang mga hobbies nyo. Pero I can really tell, napaka-passionate talaga nila. Pero ang gusto ko malaman, like, how's your regular day? Early riser ba si Rosie, si Steph? How's your normal day? Kasi parang ang dami yung yung mga problems of the world na dinidil, di ba? So gusto ko malaman, like, do you have breakfast in the morning, and what's your routine?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. That is still a struggle for me. Really having a routine, having my boundaries, because it's not easy, diba? Because we receive news every day, not just about the Philippines, but also about our community here in Toronto, in Canada, and elsewhere. So really understanding how to use our energy when it comes to that, because it is heavy. It is heavy work.
Heavy work, yeah.
Yeah, but I do try, my basic needs of eating breakfast, and I'm very
Basic
grateful
needs.
that I still live with my parents, and they provide me with the food, with the shelter, and I get to sleep in a comfortable bed in a house. So that I'm really grateful for that. And just knowing, even scheduling friend time, chika time.
Chismis time.
Hindi naman chismis. Pero that's really
Bad yan.
but really, integrating those your really everyday relationships, because that is part of building that collective life, and being an example that it's not all work work work, diba? Because that is
Yeah.
what's the hustle culture is perpetuated here, especially in the Western sphere, diba? So ayun, trying to balance the work-life balance,
Work-life balance, yeah.
nourishing myself physically and mentally, because mental health issues have been amplified during this pandemic.
Yes,
Of course,
yes.
Yeah, and this summer, labas ng labas, going out and just getting sun.
Enjoy the sunny, the
Enjoying
sunny
the
days.
sun. Yeah. So that is not an established routine, but a lot of things that I'm trying to integrate in my daily life.
That's good. That's good. Yeah.
Rosie, ikaw.
Oh, sige ako.
Oh, see. Sila, Viking.
I feel like
Viking.
my days are very long because okay, let's say it's a weekday. So I don't have to get up that early actually, but I get up around 7:30, and then I bike to work. So I work in Regent Park, which is east of downtown, where there's it's near East Chinatown, right? Because we serve lots of Chinese communities, and there's also many Filipinos in that area, St. Jamestown area. So I bike to work. That takes me like 45 minutes. It's like 11 kilometers. And then at the office, I
Less
don't know.
pollution
do
yan,
I-
ha?
I
Yung,
think
ano,
go,
I know. She bikes
nagpapabike,
everywhere.
I go
Yeah.
through my office.
Napaka-environmental, ano ba din?
Yeah.
Diba?
I feel like it's more draining to ride the train and wait for the bus. It's actually faster when I bike. It takes, less time to actually bike to work. Yeah, so and at work, usually I might meet with some community members who, sometimes I assist with immigration concerns. And actually through my job, I'm continuing to learn about inequities. Even in Toronto, or in the Philippines or in our Filipino community, we say, oh, life is perfect here, or it's so much better here. But I see so many of our kababayans, other Filipinos who are still struggling. For example, in Toronto, well, we know one of the biggest issues is paying rent. It's
Sure.
so
Yeah.
expensive to
Totoo.
live here.
Yeah, it is.
It's
yeah.
expensive, yeah.
And
it's just getting more expensive.
It's just getting
nowadays,
more
yeah.
and more expensive. And for someone who's a migrant worker still trying to earn their permanent residence, or someone who's undocumented who may not even be paid minimum wage, maybe
Right,
even
yeah.
be paid less. How can they even live, right? So when the question to me is thrown, how do you take care of yourself? I can't help but think about so many in our community who don't even have the time to think about that because they're so busy working. So, like I said, through my job, I'm just continue to learn about the inequities and the need not just for nonprofit work, which is what my job is, but also the need for community advocacy because, like Steph said, these are systemic issues. For example, to apply for subsidized housing in Toronto, the wait list, you can be on it for average of 7 to 15 years just to get
7 to 15
a unit that will be 30% of your income, right? Just to afford your living place, which should be a human right. So there's also a need, not just for nonprofits and charity, but there's really a need for people to stand up and demand better.
15 years, right?
Actually,
You'll
on
be
the
dead by now.
yeah,
By then.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that they have to change that. We need more affordable housing. Here
Exactly.
In Toronto. Yeah.
Yeah, mga housing
Yeah.
even here too.
Yeah, I mean, especially here in this area, like it's very expensive. I think the one bedroom here is like 1,600.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, one bedroom. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before like a few years ago, you can get a 2-bedroom for 1,600 or 1,500. That's a 2-bedroom, not anymore. Yeah.
Years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
very
impossible
expensive. Even
now,
that,
yeah.
you can't even
Yeah.
afford housing here anymore. Like the house here just went up like in the millions.
Yeah.
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 It's hard to afford to buy a house.
Oh
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
it's
the
just
bank is
getting,
giving you a hard time to get the
yeah,
mortgage.
yeah. So it's just
And to be
getting,
making a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
and you have this, the even upgraded the, what do you call this? To apply for a mortgage is like the, I forget the name of it.
Yeah,
Chris.
yung income mo.
2018, no,
Yung,
2018 when they established that, what do you call this? Oh, I have it in my mind, but I
freeze
forgot.
ang mortgage rate?
No, I'm not
Or you
talking about the rate. I'm talking about the. Oh, I forgot. Never mind. Yeah.
I'm trying to
so
think
sleepy,
too.
right? Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's like
I'm
no,
also
no.
trying to
It's
think
like
for you. So yeah.
it's the they have the stress, something like that.
Yeah, totoo yun.
The stress.
Meron ngayon, no?
Yeah, and they established that in 2018 actually, and yeah, so even though your income is enough and you have money for down payment, if you don't, the stress test. No, it's the stress test. Yeah.
Stress test.
If you can't pass the stress test, then you can't even apply for a mortgage. Yeah.
Right.
You can't buy a house. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, thank you guys for coming, and also, do you want to say hi to your family, friends?
To your friends and family,
Before
yeah.
we go, yeah.
Yeah. Hi to if my family's watching. Hi, my kuya. His name is Ting. Hello. And hi to Connor as well.
Hi, Connor.
Hi, Connor. Yeah. And thanks for watching, and of course, making the comments live. And Steph, anybody?
Nobody. Pero thank
No,
you.
I'm just saying. Do you want to say anybody? I said hi.
Migran, anak bayan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maraming salamat. Thank you for inviting us and being able to talk about these
Yeah.
issues. And through your radio show, actually, this is helping us amplify those issues
Yeah.
here and in the Philippines. So maraming salamat. And
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're
hello.
welcome.
Thank you
Yeah.
for
It's a
having
pleasure,
us.
guys, to have
Yeah,
you.
to
And
come
thank you
back
for
next
all
time
the
too,
information that you
Yeah,
shared.
actually, the information that you shared with us, we have no idea about it. Yeah,
And we can
especially
share
the one in
those
the Philippines.
resources. We can share
Yeah,
those
especially in the Philippines, Chris, right? We don't know. We never heard of it.
Yeah.
So also, you
It's
informed
good
us.
to
Yeah,
know.
it's good to
Talagang,
about
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
maganda tong show natin na to. And of course, we will continue to help you guys. Anytime you want to reach out, any events that you have, please reach out to us.
Yeah, and then let's see what we can help
Promote
you guys.
that.
Yeah. Okay, thanks again. And this is Rainbow Connection. And this is Ian, your host, and my co-host, Chris Aldebar. Chris, thank you.
Maraming salamat
and,
sa inyo.
till, next,
Thank you, Steph.
next
Thank
week.
you, Rosie.
Thank you.
Okay,
Chris
thank
and
you.
Pleasure
Ian.
to have
Owen.
you.
Yeah. Goodbye. Good night.